infrastructure, and communities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, and with that, pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021, the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website, so you are all aware the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few points to follow. First off, members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in the committee room. Keep in mind the directives from the Board of Internal Economy regarding masking and health protocols. Lastly, before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the Proceedings and Verification Officer. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and myself will do our very best to maintain the order of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. Members, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on April 27th, 2021, the committee will now continue its study of railway safety and impacts of railway operations on neighboring properties. I would now like to introduce and welcome our witnesses. First off, we have, as an individual, Bruce Campbell. Bruce is the adjunct professor, Faculty of Environmental and Urban Change, York University. We have from the city of Thorold, Mayor Terry Ugolini. We have from the Coalition des Citoyens et Organismes Engagés pour la Sécurité Ferroviaire de Lac-Mégantic, Robert Bellafort, spokesperson. We have from the Comité Ferroviaire de Boucherville, once again joining us, Isabelle Bleu, City Councillor, City of Boucherville, and Francois Bonnet, Chair, Subcommittee. Finally, we have from the Port Robinson Proud Group, Jonathan Lepera, member, Cliff Penn, member, and Joan Wolfrath, member. I do want to add that Mr. Penn will be joining us a little bit later on in the meeting. We do have on our list Mr. George Marks, also a member, but George has fallen ill and will not be attending this evening. We also have from the Teamsters Canada Rail Conference, Mr. Chad McPherson. Chad is the locomotive engineer. To all of you, welcome. And we're going to start off with Mr. Bruce Campbell for 5 minutes. Mr. Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you. And thank you to honorable members for inviting me to testify before this committee. I want to make a few initial points at the outset about Lac-Mégantic. I know Mr. Belfleur is going to focus his comments on that, I presume. And I think it's important that we remember. It's easy to forget with time that the death and destruction that terrible night was without precedent on Canadian soil in over a century. My second point is I continue to be troubled that a commission of inquiry still has not been held. And finally, CP Rail's continued denial of its role in the disaster is inexcusable, though not surprising. My focus here is on the effectiveness of the safety oversight regime, safety management systems. SMS was a major shift from prescriptive regulation, leaving the railways much greater leeway to manage their operations. When it was introduced in 2002, officials insisted it would constitute an additional safety layer. They still do. However, no additional regulatory resources were provided. In fact, they continued to be squeezed. The number of unannounced on-site inspections dwindled. SMS has become a form of blame shifting, providing cover for the government. After an accident, the language turns to blame. We set the rules, they didn't follow the rules. We saw this in Lac-Mégantic for sure. The safety management systems have been on the TSB, the Transportation Safety Board's watch list since the list was created in 2010 to highlight, quote, issues posing the greatest threat to Canada's transportation system. It's still there. I want to now address the status of a few SMS-related recommendations from your 2016 update on rail safety report. Recommendation 14 involved action to improve fatigue management. Since 1994, the TSB has identified sleep-related fatigue as a contributing or risk factor in 31 rail occurrences. It first made it onto the TSB watch list in 2016. It's still there. Science-based fatigue management practices continue to be thwarted by the companies. So that's a major safety risk that's still not dealt with. The second involved re-examining the rules on maximum wear of rails. Since 2014, 7 trains carrying crude oil derailed and spilled their contents. 4 resulted in fires, most recently in 2020. In each, a major cause was track infrastructure defects. A 2020 TSB advisory warned that the increased risks associated with the operation of key trains are still not being addressed by the current track safety rules. It also warned that the newest tank cars appear to be equally vulnerable to product releases compared to older models when they derail at speeds of more than 55 kilometers per hour. And finally, that Transport Canada review whistleblower protection provisions to determine if SMS is the appropriate framework. In 2021, 2 international bodies jointly ranked the effectiveness of whistleblowing frameworks in 37 countries. Canada was tied for last place. Clearly not an appropriate framework. As you know, in 2019, there was a 25% jump from the previous 10-year average in accidents involving dangerous goods. The decline in 2020 correlates with the decrease in traffic volume. The 2021 AG report found Transport Canada failed to assess the effectiveness of SMS. A big loophole, said the AG, not dissimilar to its 2013 finding. And the environmental commissioner in the AG's office, in its report, stated bluntly the window for a recurrence of a Lac-Mégantic type disaster was still open. So the challenge, I believe, is to determine to what extent the current safety oversight regime is fulfilling its obligation to protect the public and what needs to be done to improve that. So I think I'm at my time limit. I make a number of recommendations. We could deal with them in Q&A, or I could provide my list to the clerk for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Well done. We're now going to move on to Mayor Terry Ugolini from the City of Thorold. Mayor Ugolini, the floor is yours.
Through you, Chair Badaway. Good afternoon, everyone. It is truly an honor to have been asked to speak to the House of Commons Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure, and Communities this afternoon. I must first start my comments by stating that the City of Thorold is very fortunate to have excellent representation from MP Vance Badaway, a true champion in Niagara. I would also like to thank him as he continues to work for our city, the region, and the private sector to create a new era in rail and marine transportation. Thorold's new multimodal hub will help Niagara lead a sustainable industrial expansion in Ontario, while promoting railroad and marine transportation and creating a welcoming and sustainable environment for industry. The major regional facility will grow trade in a more sustainable way and contribute to Ontario's quality of life by reducing congestion while supporting key industries and creates new and innovative jobs. Now more than ever, Canadians are realizing the importance of supply chains and transportation efficiency. These logistical assets within the City of Thorold and Niagara region rely on access to efficient and safe rail systems. The implementation of new rail infrastructure and the refurbishment of aging rail lines will be a catalyst in supporting and expanding existing and future supply chain requirements, while making safety paramount and at the forefront of every decision. Transloading operations are becoming more commonplace along canal fronting lands in our community and this requires attention to every conceivable detail through policy adaptation and development. These policies will ultimately protect those working on site and all citizens in which these rail assets and multimodal operations exist. Successful communities are able to manage the impacts of growth, and I would like to take this opportunity to share some serious issues that have arisen because of increased railway activity in our community. These issues affect local residents on a daily basis and unnecessarily puts our citizens at risk. The community of Port Robinson East is situated between the Welland Canal and CN rail line and has only two means of egress. When the rail crossings at Canby Street and Bigger Road are blocked due to slow-moving or stopped rail traffic, residents and businesses are blocked until the rail traffic is cleared. Recently, longer trains, 100-plus cars, have extended the response time for emergency services, disrupted delivery times to local businesses, and created a great deal of inconvenience for residents, tourists, and cyclists wishing to access the Greater Niagara Circle route. Our suggestion here and a solution is to restrict the length of the cars traveling through this portion of the community to a maximum length of 945 meters. That will free up the distance between the two rail crossings so that they won't both be blocked at the same time. Shunting activity, number two, shunting activities at the Port Robinson Yard have increased measurably over the last 5 years. Blocked roadways, dust, noise, vibration, and the coupling of rail cars severely impact the quality of life and mobility of our residents in this community. Our solution, move the shunting activity outside the residential area of small village and or install noise barriers to reduce the impact of operating activities on the east side of Port Robinson Yard. Point three, empty tanker and rail car storage is occurring for extended periods of time on spur lines that crisscross in our city. In particular, the rail line currently leased by GIO Railway Incorporated from CN, just Linden Street, close to our downtown business district, has created concerns for area residents by decreasing their enjoyment of their property and attracting undesirable activity. Solution, improve communication with the City of Thorold Fire Chief regarding the contents of stored materials and relocate long-term storage outside the city's urban area. While we understand that infrastructure that exists today was in many cases built years ago to support industry and goods movement of that time period, in many cases, the infrastructure no longer supports the needs. City today and future generations more from us in that regard. Government rail systems will continue to connect us to the North American and ultimately global markets, and they will help fuel the economic recovery, not come at the expense of families, friends, and loved ones. We must remember that every decision we make affects the lives of those around us, and we cannot be complacent in our efforts to ensure a safe working and livable environment. Economies through time always bounce back. Families who have suffered from disasters of the past only now have a memory. And all that we do, as there is a need to take every precaution, as the mindset ultimately contributes to a sustainable, resilient, and safe way forward for all businesses and citizens. Please know that you have a willing partner and champion in me and the City of Thorold, and we work in partnership to implement. Thank you for your time and consideration on the above and this opportunity to speak to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well done. Now moving on to Mr. Bellafleur. Mr. Bellafleur, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Mr. Bellafleur?
Oh, bon. Excusez-moi, j'ai mis mon micro.
Pardon me, I've got my mic on. Thank you to the chair and the members. And hello to Mr. Berthold, who is our MP. And I'm here from the Coalition for the Lac-Mégantic citizens. First, I'm going to talk about the specific situation for Lac-Mégantic, and the second part will deal with rail safety in Canada. So, first of all, for Lac-Mégantic, listen. This is a small community who endured one of the worst tragedies in a century. And we are still very much affected by this tragedy. The city has barely been built back, only 50%, and trains go through Lac-Mégantic day and night. Imagine, only 3 months after the tragedy, trains started up again. And the CMQR and even dangerous goods have been transported through the town. We're talking about propane gas, sulfuric acid, sodium chlorate, automobile gas, and various goods. And so they are going down the same hill. And they're using the same curve downtown. And for years, trains have been parked along this hill. And this happened on the night of July 5th, 2013. And this is happening again. And I thank the CP for stopping this dangerous practice, but there's still a lot of work to do. Listen, the tracks in Lac-Mégantic are in ruins. They're very old. 253 rails are defective between Farnham and Lac-Mégantic. That was in 2019. So it's just to show you that there's a lot of work to do to make those railways safe. The town of Lac-Mégantic is still suffering the damages of this tragedy. And there's never been an independent public inquiry, despite it being called for many times. There's been requests made of the government. There was no follow-up given to that request. And I think this really prevented people from getting over this and grieving fully. And we don't know the real causes. And the main players, main people responsible, were not identified either. So it's a huge scar. And we eventually hope that the government will follow up on this. Now, with the situation in Lac-Mégantic, we have 2 recommendations for the committee. And we hope that the committee will make recommendations to the government. Lac-Mégantic is a specific case, and it requires a specific situation. What we're asking is that there be a moratorium, a permanent one, on the circulation of transit petroleum. Not the one that we are using locally or regionally, but the oil that's coming from Alberta and going to other countries, and for which the population is assuming all risks and gets no benefits. And so we would like the Standing Committee of Transportation to recommend to the government, because of the unique situation of Lac-Mégantic, that there be a permanent moratorium declared on petroleum. There are already enough dangerous goods coming through our town. And we have to get rid of this down this hill and the curb. We no longer want to have unit trains carrying oil through our town. The whole population agrees with this. And once again, we'd like there to be a public inquiry into this. It's with other cases, it had been 10 years. And for us, we've been waiting 8 years. So that's it for the situation in Lac-Mégantic. Now for the rail sector in general. In my brief, I gave you a list of what's happened since 2016. The TSB has many statistics. There's been a continual increase in rail incidents in Canada, and that's been since 2016, and even since Lac-Mégantic's accident. And so it's only getting worse. We're talking hundreds of accidents involving dangerous goods. Luckily, this often doesn't happen in urban settings. The catastrophes happen in areas where there's less impact on people, but it has an impact on the environment. Radio-Canada on the 10th of July 2020 that the number of incidents, rail incidents, had gone up by a large percentage, and these are stats from the TSB. So this is not a phenomenon. This is not something that should be taken lightly. This is a trend. Earlier, I was saying that these accidents don't happen in urban settings. However, it's important to recall Mississauga, December of 1999, when a train derailed with a huge quantity of a chemical product. And this type of train goes through Lac Mégantic. There were also a number of derailments between 2000 and 2015, and you can read about them in the statistics given by the TSB. So oil transportation is a big problem. A big problem. Why? Well, because the rules have been changed. And the TSB has published notices, and I've quoted them in my report, and I'll give you the number of the notice. The 717-020. What was discovered at the...
Est-ce que je peux terminer?
May I finish?
Just, if you can just wrap it up with your closing comments, that would be great.
OK.
Thank you.
Alors, juste pour terminer.
So to conclude, so I want to tell you that in the end, our railways are maintained like they were 20 years ago. There is a railway management system, whereas today we've got much longer and heavier and faster trains. And so this means that there's more, that the railways are wearing down faster, and that's why there's been so many derailments, as mentioned by the TSB. So we have to review that system. I had other recommendations here for the committee. We'd like that the laws and regulations be completely reviewed, and that the true role of Guardian be reinstated to Transport Canada.
You can pass on those notes to the clerk. We'll make sure they get into the record for you. Anything else that you may want to add, you can add into some of the answers if members have questions for you. So I want to thank you for your presentation, and well done. Great job. We're now going to move on. I do believe I was told that Ms.
La mémoire est envoyée 2 fois, hier et aujourd'hui.
The brief was sent 2 times, yesterday and today.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Ms. Bleu and Mr. Bolnier, I'm told that you're going to be you already made your presentation, so you're just going to be here to answer questions. That's correct? Thank you, and it's great to have you back. We're now going to move on to representatives from Port Robinson Proud. We have Mr. John Lepera and Ms. Joan Wolfrath. I believe I was told that June is going first. Is that correct? June, you just want to take yourself off mute. Is it you're going to go first, and Mr. Lepera is going to go second?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you have the floor.
Okay. Hello, my name is June Wolfrath. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. After the Lac Mégantic tragedy, in which 47 people died when a parked train that was insufficiently secured ran down a hill, derailing and exploding, there have been calls for increased scrutiny of rail safety, including the Auditor General's report. Following the disaster, the Transportation Safety Board made 5 recommendations after its probe of the Lac Mégantic rail disaster. I respectfully ask the CN representatives to address 2 recommendations in particular. The emergency response assistance plans must be created by Canadian railway companies when large volumes of liquid hydrocarbons, hazardous materials, are shipped. Question: since the TSB made this recommendation in January 2014, what, if any, emergency response assistance plans have been developed for Port Robinson community? And what recent steps has CN taken to operationalize the plan with local first response agencies and other support organizations? 2, that railway companies should conduct strategic route planning and enhance train operations for all trains carrying dangerous goods. Since the TSB made this recommendation in June 2014, what measures, if any, has CN taken to choose their routes carefully when shipping dangerous goods, which could mean diverting some shipments around populated residential areas, namely Port Robinson? Further, the argument that route planning is not a realistic solution and that moving such shipments around populated areas is logistically prohibitive and would be costly is no excuse. Shipping hazardous goods remains an unacceptable hazard to the community of Port Robinson. Rail incidents will happen. The timing of such incidents and its impacts to the community are unknown. For example, the Transportation Safety Board Incident Occurrence Database indicates a number of runaway train near misses, such as when 2 CN cars full of corrosive anhydrous ammonia ran uncontrolled onto the main line from Port Robinson near Niagara Falls, Ontario, until a citizen spotted the cars and reported them, dated August 19, 2001. Personally, living in Port Robinson has destroyed my quality of life. It's a living nightmare. I have now bouts of depression and often am short-tempered. I was never like this. The first year here, I slept perhaps 3 hours a night for 99% of the time. I have pain and fullness in my ears from constant jet-like, plane-like noise in my backyard from accelerating locomotives. Dynamite charged like bangs go off day and night. Excuse me, I'm just going to get my next page. CN trains block our main roads because of the small yard. I have seen an ambulance with flashing lights turn around because of this. Idling occurs 12 hours and more. My 93-year-old mother and I experience constant anxiety waiting for the next train and the next full day of noise. During the CN strike, locomotives parked directly behind our homes for at least 5 hours, idling 24/7, nonstop. Last year, I took part in mediation with the CTA and CN. My complaint was noise and vibration. I was obligated to sign an NDA and therefore, unfortunately, I cannot discuss important facts. And to be honest, I'm afraid I may suffer retribution from CN if I do slip up mentioning anything like that. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfrath. Well done. Great job. We're now going to move on to Mr. LaPera. Mr. LaPera, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Badaway. Can I just have a time to know what I'm working with?
We're going to give you the full 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Imagine being trapped beneath an insurmountable rock. That's what life is like when you're at the mercy of the CTA and the wrath of CN Rail. Port Robinson was once a quiet rural community where I sought to start my family 17 years ago. It all changed 4 months later. Where did all this train activity come from? Why did CN move a successfully functional shunting yard to Port Robinson, which is grossly undersized? How many complaints were documented at the previous location? What was the process? I can feel the trains idling in my bones, almost like tinnitus pulsing through your ears. With COVID, your home is your castle. Unless you live in Port Robinson, it's your prison. Our houses shake day and night. The pungent smell of diesel, the smell of rail ties, the constant vibration that rattles any two objects in your house that touch together. The film of diesel fuel on the windshields of our vehicles. Dust that coats cars moments after they're washed. Perhaps CN could volunteer a shovel of dirt from their rail yard near one of their lines for content and chemical analysis. Because the dust that is breathed is by my kids every day they want to play outside. What if I told you 90% of the pot lights in my basement are dead? They're a year old. There's cracks in our foundations, beautiful concrete around our pools heaved, and our driveways sink. Most people know the holidays based on the calendar. We know by the train yard. Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, our houses shake violently. We don't invite friends or family over. It's too embarrassing. And then there's the volatile cargo that could kill on contact or upon explosion. My wife and I are teachers. We have no margin for error. Suicide, abuse, depression, anxiety. We're expected to psychoanalyze 20 to 30 kids with each interaction while delivering curriculum. Now figure in minimal sleep due to train shunting all night. We're not talking a 2-cup of coffee fix. Nurses, paramedics, firefighters, police officers, and other frontline workers have suffered at work due to the implication of COVID who live in our subdivision, and at home due to CN's operations. I was invited to the mediation with CTA and CN Rail in 2020. I refused to sign the NDA, which was a prerequisite for our participation. In a democratic country, under the guise of an arbitrary mediation, why hide the contents of the meetings? Simple. Show us your info, we'll do nothing, and you'll be muzzled. If you're looking for proof, we've had 2 meetings of mediation with not an ounce of resolve. Why did CN idle their trains north past the subdivision last night? Coincidence, we're testifying today. But wait a second, you can voluntarily move your operations north without complaints? Sadly, I still felt those trains in my bones as I sat in a chair in my basement. Tuesday evening, I learned that CN cannot block a crossing for more than 5 minutes while shunting. Shocking. CN safety records should have them on the CTA speed dial. Yet Tuesday night, the CTA admitted the best they can do is levy a fine to a company that earned record profits of $3.2 billion in 2020. CN has repeatedly said they can't afford to move their shunting yard from our community. I'm curious what a CTA fine might be. How about legislation that holds rail companies legally responsible, fines that reflect their earnings? Bill Gates, a significant investor in CN Rail and proponent of the environment, says on his website, we need to reward people who have the courage to take difficult steps. That's why we are all here today. This committee will be forced to investigate rail incidents on CN lines, CN's rail yard derailment reports and cargo manifest, federal compliance, dangerous activities, volatile chemicals and the warning labels in the event of a massive disaster. How long do they block rail crossings? What's their rate of compliance? How long does it take to separate a rail car in the event of emergency? How often has that threshold been met? The tail should not wag the dog. Legislation can be changed. Ethics are what allow you to sleep at night, and this panel was elected to be leaders, not followers. It all starts with holding CN Rail and the CTA accountable right now. My hope, once the final report is written and due diligence is served, no longer can either of these operations represent a function of neglect, complacency, or entitlement. You've caused headaches probably for every elected official on this committee and their constituents. You will be shamed into changing your policies and procedures, which easily could have been made in good conscience and stewardship without this committee. I thank you all for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Lepere. Well done. We're now going to move on to Mr. Chad McPherson. Chad is a locomotive engineer. Chad, welcome. You got the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, bonjour. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to appear here before the committee today. My name is Chad McPherson. I represent the legislative position of the Teamsters Rail Conference Canada and our local division of 510 in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, which also encompasses Regina, Saskatchewan. I work as a locomotive engineer for CP Rail and have been employed with the company for nearly 27 years. Today, I would like to discuss some important issues that are affecting rail safety in our area. As mentioned previously, blocking public crossings at grade is a continual issue that requires a resolve. With today's rail carriers building trains well beyond 12,000 feet, which I did some quick math, is approximately 3.6 kilometers. It is nearly impossible to stop a train without occupying a crossing at grade. A typical example of multiple block crossings happens in Regina, Saskatchewan, whereas a train at approximately 9,600 feet or 2.9 kilometers is required to stop and line manual switches. While doing this, the train is occupying 11 crossings. This is from Winnipeg Street, Ring Road, all the way down to downtown Regina. Many of these crossings are major roadways with high vehicular traffic volumes. There's also a school playground area with a pedestrian crossing in the area that is blocked for a significant amount of time while this process happens. The current practice that I see here in Moose Jaw is having a 10,000-foot train, 3.4 kilometers, reduce its traffic from the tail end of the train, which is a slow and arduous task and results in public crossings being blocked in excess of 60 minutes at any given time. A vital component of rail safety is emergency response procedures. Greater attention and more strict regulatory procedures are needed for rail carriers' compliance. As now it stands, an emergency response plan is in place for individual areas within the southern Saskatchewan area. These procedures are often simply re-signed from the previous year with little attention given to mock drills or practice to prepare employees and the public for an emergent situation that may involve evacuation. This lack of practice was evident in a recent sideswipe in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, in which dangerous commodities and special dangerous commodities were being carried on a train that was struck by another train movement. No activation of an emergency tone was initiated, and several other inactions were observed as a result. The incident also included a personal injury which came because of ineffective communications. Another issue which affects rail safety in Regina Moose Jaw area exists with training of new conductors. In the past, it has been felt that by the union employees at rail carriers, the rail carriers' priority was having additional manpower available rather than ensuring these conductors were capable and qualified to perform the tasks required. In recent past, new hire employees were simply qualified through a phone call or as little as applying a handbrake to a rail car and lining a hand-operated switch. The duties of a conductor are vast, and I believe more involved approach must be taken in the qualifying portion of conductor training. Advancing forward with this initiative would be a stricter regulation on minimum qualification standards. Currently, railway employee standard regulations require recertification at a minimum of every 3 years. I believe there's room for rail carriers to create, in conjunction with regulatory bodies and unionized representatives, practices that allow for better familiarization with rules and procedures. Finally, I hope to find some answers to some common questions regarding the duty and rest period rules for railway operating employees. There have been some significant changes in the existing work rest rules and some interpretation on how these changes will apply to duty and rest period rules come into effect. Fatigue in the railway is an ongoing concern to railway employees. Although the TCRC has negotiated some great improvements to work-life conditions to the employees, it is felt greater improvements can be made through regulations. Today, I hope to find some answers or to encourage some communication on the topic. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McPherson. Well done. Members, a couple things. First off, we did start this meeting at 3:49, and we will be getting our full 2 hours in. I know Ms. Kusi was going to ask that question, so I'm going to answer it before she asks it. So we will get the full 2 hours in. Plus, there was a request to extend the meeting 15 minutes past the 2 hours, and we're also going to be giving that as well. So we're going to have 2 hours and 15 minutes going up to 3:49 plus the 15 minutes. So with that, we are going to start our first round of questions off with Mr. Luc Berthold from the Conservative Party. And before I go to Luc, I want to welcome you back. Luc was on our committee from 15 to, I believe, 19 and was a great member of the committee. And Luc, again, I want to welcome you back. And I also want to welcome Mr. Francis Scarpalagia. Francis is a part of the Liberal Party and is subbing in for Mr. Rogers today. So, Mr. Berthold, you got the floor for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to be back at the Committee on Transport and Infrastructure. It's a committee that I've always liked, and we have a nice dynamic relationship here. And by the way, I'm very happy to see you, Mr. Bradaway. Now, I feel strange calling myself an MP or a witness. Given the study, I absolutely wanted to participate in this, and I thank my Conservative colleagues for leaving me a spot today. I thank the witnesses today. Mr. Bellefleur is from Lac-Mégantic, and I know he really cares about citizens' safety in Lac-Mégantic, and he's always very present, and he always reminds people of the importance of rail safety. It is the top priority in Lac-Mégantic. We cannot relive the 2013 tragedy. And the second priority that we have in Lac-Mégantic is the construction of a bypass track. And I'd like to ask Mr. Bellefleur, about the importance in Lac-Mégantic for the deadlines and promises that were made to the citizens. I ask that they be upheld in terms of the delivery of this bypass track. Thank you, Mr. Berthold. Thank you. Yes, it is very difficult for the residents of Lac-Mégantic that we still have to wait until 2023. Imagine 10 years after the tragedy. We have to endure these trains that go through here day and night. There's one at 2 a.m. and 4 o'clock. They come through here to go through customs, so there's a change in conductor. And when we know what they're transporting, dangerous goods down the hill, it's awful to ask somebody, residents, to go through this and to wait over 10 years. And in 2023, it won't even be possible because of the additional delays caused by this last year. And Mr. Berthold is right in saying that this needs to be pushed forward, and I'd encourage him to keep hammering home this message and this request, because we really need your support for Lac-Mégantic. There are dangerous goods going through here. There's a dangerous hill, and at the downtown in Lac-Mégantic, we discovered a serious technical problem. There was one rail that was completely cracked right where the train derailed in July of 2013. So there's no question as to whether or not we need this bypass track. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bellefleur. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is exactly the message that I want to get across today. Since the beginning, we've been working in collaboration with as many people as possible, with political parties included, so that we can get this bypass track in place. The timeline is very tight, as was mentioned. There's a bit of skepticism around being able to get it in place by 2023, but the government reiterated on a number of occasions its commitment, so we expect that the government will fulfill its commitment. I would like to point out to the committee that there was another report that was made public in the House today, and it's quite severe towards Transport Canada, and it comes from the Public Accounts Committee. And allow me to read an extract for you. It says, even if the department made major improvements to planning and oversight of security with investigations, that's being recognized, I'm recognizing that, the monitoring activities does not show if it improved railway safety. Furthermore, there was no measurement of the efficiency of various monitoring activities. This is a report that was tabled in the House of Commons today, and it's a follow-up to the meetings that we had in the Public Accounts Committee. Mr. Campbell, you talked a lot about the railway management system. How do you react to the fact that the government is not measuring the efficiency of these systems still today after so many years? After so many years of them being in place and after so many years of the tragedy?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better than the AG, the Auditor General herself, who said it was, it was a big loophole. And it was pretty much the same kind of critique that the AG 2013 report had. So it's, it remains a risk, and what else can I say? It's pretty dismaying.
Mr. Berthold.
La vérificatrice générale avait
The Auditor General said that she was discouraged to see that the results weren't being measured, so I think that says a lot. Mr. Chair, I would like to submit to members of the committee another document that I received, which is a follow-up to all recommendations of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee that was sent to Public Accounts. I will transfer it to the clerk so everyone can read it. So it's a follow-up to all the recommendations when we sat together in 2016, including two recommendations which I'd like to address today. Recommendation 1, which says that Transport Canada accelerate the current study on the bypass track and collaborate with others to facilitate the project. Now, in the situation where it was submitted by Transport Canada, well, according to them, it's finished, but there's still no bypass track. So I think it's important that the committee be aware of the situation. And to follow up on Mr. McPherson's testimony, thank you.
Mr. Berthold.
So I will
now-
table the report for you.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to the Liberal Party. Mr. Iacono, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank all the witnesses that are present today, as their testimonies are essential for this study. I will address my questions to the Port Robinson Prouds residents. We all expect to enjoy a good quality of life in our homes. However, I understand that many families are greatly affected daily by the CN operations. First two questions. What kind of attempts have you made to resolve the shutting issue with CN, and how have they responded?
Ms. Wolfrath or Ms. LaPera or Mr. LaPera, which one wants to jump in? Ms. Wolfrath, go ahead.
So the first one, and we're advised by our municipality to contact CN via email directly. And when I first started to complain via email, they would answer. I have to tell you that in the last few months, they do not even let me know that they received the complaint, and I never hear back from them. So I would say in the last 2 months, I hear nothing. I am very respectful when I send my email in, and I ask them, why is the locomotive shunting when it's 20 or 30 degrees Celsius? Because I know on their website, they explain 5 Celsius and below. It must.
Thank you. I'd like, thank you,
thank
Mrs.
you.
I'd like Ada to also give an opportunity to have responses. Go ahead, Mr. LaPera.
Mr. LaPera, go ahead.
Thank you. And I thank you for inviting us today. It's a great question. And if I came up terse or serious in my speech, I wanted to meet the time limit, not to disrespect the committee. We've tried everything. I used to be a city councilor, actually, for 10 years in my municipality. And we've done everything. When I was on council, we had met with members of parliament. We had met with CN. We'd tried every means possible that route. And I have been off council probably for about 10 years now. And we've tried 2 mediation attempts. We've tried the CTA. You call the CN police and they're very respectful. I mean, I've never met a rude police officer yet. And basically you understand they have very little control over the operations in the yard. Sometimes a phone call can fix it. Thus far, the most productive means of resolution has been Chair Badaway. Chair Badaway has shown leadership I've never seen before. No disrespect to any of you, but one phone call from him has meant that shunting stopped within 10 minutes. That meant the idling stopped within 10 minutes, but this wasn't consistent. What's happened is sometimes it'll work, sometimes it doesn't. And you have to understand, I'm also texting at 1 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, whenever. And he gets it. Like, you know, proof is Chair Badaway gets it. But those calls go unanswered now. When the complaints go in, it seems to have fallen on deaf ears. And I do want to point to last night in particular. The argument has always been in Thorold, move the shunting north. There is so much barren wasteland. You know, it's just unusable land that will not impact anybody. And I do want to point out, this yard was expanded after the city requested it to be relocated. So it's not like an after the fact. We requested they relocate it, and then they went and dumped, I think it was $100,000. We'll have the Mayor Galino have to look it up. And then now says, well, we can't afford to move it. I'm sorry, with $3.2 billion in profits, this is like us buying Kit Kat at the Avondale. This is about being a good corporate citizen. This is about, our soldiers did not die on the beaches of Vimy Ridge for this conversation to have to happen today.
Thank you.
It's embarrassing.
Mr. Iacono?
Mr. Penn, do you want to add to that?
I don't believe he's joined us yet.
Mr. Penn hasn't joined us yet.
Perfect. My next question is to both of you again. Do you have any idea what the cost might be to relocate the yard?
Mr. LaPera?
I would have no idea. We've never gotten that far into the conversation, nor have I been privy. Perhaps Mayor Ugolini might be able to shed some light on that.
Thank you. Mrs. Wolfhard, do you have any comments to that?
I honestly don't know, but I was once quoted, I can't remember who told me that it would take about $1 million. And personally, I think $1 million to CN is peanuts. That's all
Okay.
I got to say.
Again, please do not judge the question I'm asking. Is just to get it on record for
Okay.
both of you again. Whom do you think should bear the cost to relocate the yard?
Ms. Woolrath?
I think that it should be CN should bear the majority, but I think the city of Thorold may have some responsibility.
Mayor Ugolini, did you have a comment to make? You're on mute, Terry.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, so we've met with CN as the city multiple times. We've had those discussions. We've talked about like moving the yard north because we think that's a feasible solution. And it's probably the cheapest solution. The problem is, and the Port Robinson Group knows this very well, the length of trains is increased and the amount of shunting done at that location because the closing of one or two other yards has increased the need in that yard. So you have to understand there's a history here. That yard wasn't as busy as it is now. So to increase activity in that yard in a residential area, I think should never have happened. And so who should bear the cost? CN should bear the cost because they've increased activity and increased the length of the trains. So to move that yard because it doesn't fit being in a residential area should be at the cost of CN. But I know the city would work with CN because we do have some right-of-ways and own some property just north that we could work with them and come up with a feasible solution. But it takes, they have to be willing to make that move. And I'm going to tell you that a big argument they always bring is if they move the yard north, it affects their shunting operations on the length of trains that they can put together. But you know what? Putting together longer trains and total disrespecting a neighborhood to me is not a feasible answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Wolfrath and Mr. LaPera. Thank you, Mr. Iacono. We're now going to move on to the Bloc Québécois. Mr. Barcelou-Duval, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think we had strong and touching testimony today, and I'd like to thank the witnesses who are here. And personally, I heard you, and I hope that we'll be able to come up with a report that reflects your testimony today. My first question is for Mr. Bellefleur. You earlier brought up that you've still seen defective rails belonging to the CN, and that dangerous goods, including petroleum, are still going through Lac Mégantic. Do you think it's appropriate that such materials are going through the downtown of a town or even around an urban city setting? And do you think the information about what is going through your town should be available? Thank you. These are CP trains and not CN ones. Oh, pardon me. No problem. These are large Canadian companies who are affected by this. No, it's not normal, in our opinion, to see 36 propane gas tanks and containing other things like automobile gas and sulfuric acid going down the hill. This is the second biggest hill in Canada because of its length. And it comes downtown on a very sharp turn. When the tragedy occurred, it was a 4.5 degree turn. We had to bypass the area of the tragedy, and now it's at 8 degrees. 8 degrees if the conductor loses control of the train, and if it does not slow down enough when coming down the hill, because once the acceleration is underway, try to stop a train of that length. It accelerates. So it would be another catastrophe for Lac Mégantic. So it's not normal to see those kinds of goods going through Lac Mégantic. And it shouldn't be going through any downtown, anywhere. The goods being transported are no longer goods of necessity or needed by the residents. These are goods for businesses, for industry. And usually they shouldn't be diverted towards here. Thank you, Mr. Bellefleur. I want you to answer my second question about the information of goods that are circulating through the downtown. Well, we took part in an environmental assessment in 2019, and we tried to ask the Quebec company if we could get information on the goods being transported, and it's confidential. However, using the signs, and reading the numbers, we can see what's going through. So I have a surveillance camera in the trees, and it records all the trains going by. So all citizens with a cell phone can easily see what's going through the town, despite this secret that's so well kept by industry. Another question for you. It was brought up earlier. Now, the CP said recently that it was impossible to meet the deadline that was announced by the government. That is to say, a completed track in 2023. Now, there was a recent change in the situation, and it's being said that it might be possible. I'd like to know from you, do you think it's possible? And if so, how could they manage to do it? I'm being told that the plans and the engineering drawings aren't complete, among other things. And of course, construction hasn't even started, which is normal if the rest hasn't been done yet. So in your opinion, do you think that it's credible? Do you think it's possible? We consulted an engineer, and he confirmed that right now it is possible for it to be built and operational for 2023. But imagine, the land hasn't even been acquired. As for the transport office, that whole process has not been dealt with yet. The drawings haven't even been done yet. And it's supposed to be delivered in 2 years. Well, listen, we'll have to see. A question for Ms. Blot. We saw you earlier, but we didn't have a chance to talk to you very much. Now, you also spoke out against the lack of information on what's being shipped through your town. Can you tell me who has access to that information, when, and what information do they have access to exactly? There's something very unclear about the way the information is shared. What I understand is that some people have access to it, but not everybody. May I respond, Mr. Chair? Thank you for the question. Indeed. For Boucherville, in any case, there's only the clerk who is aware of the goods that are going through the town by train. That is when it's a very densely populated town. And he gets that information every quarter, 3 months after the goods pass through on the railway. It doesn't make sense. How can we plan or look into the future? We have first responder systems, but how can we plan emergency services when we know 3 months later what went through our town? A confidentiality agreement was signed. So once per year, the CN sends us a report that can be disclosed to a number of people, and it talks about what happened the year prior. So in March, it was received, and we found out what went through the town of Boucherville in 2020. 89% of the cars contained dangerous goods, so it is worrisome. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Barcelona. We're now going to move on to the NDP. Mr. Bachrach, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I too would like to thank all of the witnesses who are appearing today for their excellent testimony so far. It's evident to me over the course of these past two meetings that we're only just scratching the surface of what is a very important issue for so many people across the country. So I hope we get to extend this work and learn even more about what needs to be done. I'd like to begin with Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell, you're familiar with the reports from the Auditor General and the Office of the Environment Commissioner. When you read these reports, do they give you an impression that rail safety has adequately improved since the Lac-Mégantic disaster? Mr. Campbell?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. No. And the fact that these concerns have been articulated going back to just after safety management systems came into force in 2002. So then the 2007 Railway Safety Act review, the 2013, there's been a whole series of reports and reviews by the Auditor General and by other bodies, and the incrementality of improvement is incredibly disturbing, and as I said, I mean that's I think what your committee can do in the report is examine and report on the extent to which this regime, the rail safety regime, is fulfilling its obligation to protect the public. And if it's not, then I think it should be suspended. And I think conventional prescriptive type regulation should be in place until the resources are there, until all the everything is in place to ensure that safety management systems is truly minimizing the risks to rail safety.
Mr. Bachrach?
Thanks, Mr. Campbell. Now, we've talked a fair bit about safety management systems, but I want to ensure that in this study, we're getting right to the nub of the issue. Could you tell us why does the way in which the government and the rail companies utilize safety management systems, why does that pose a problem when it comes to rail safety?
Mr. Campbell?
Well, in my opening, I highlighted a few safety risks, that are outstanding, that have been outstanding for a long time. I've characterized the relationship and between the industry and Transport Canada as one of capture and complicity. And capture has to do with, and that's the power relationship between the two. And I could go on and talk to you about what capture means, but I probably don't have time in this session to do that, in your 6 minutes to do that. But it is a very, very serious issue that needs to be rebalanced. The relationship needs to be rebalanced, and I've got a lot of recommendations for doing that.
Mr. Bachrach?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Campbell, in your opinion, is Transport Canada adequately resourced to carry out its role as the regulator of Canada's railroads and protect communities and citizens when it comes to the operation of rail transport?
Mr. Campbell?
Well, I heard the ministry in the last session say it was adequately resourced. I'm skeptical. When you look at what's happened over the last 4 decades, just in the infamous Paul Martin budget cut rail Transport Canada resources by over 50%. I think, and especially the regulatory aspect of that. I tend to be reminded of what Justice Mashansky said when he appeared before the committee not long ago in 2017, and he was the justice who had the commission for the Dryden air crash, and he basically said the root cause of the Dryden crash, and it remains today, is the lack of resources. He says it remains today as a sort of Damocles hanging over the traveling public. I believe it applies equally to the rail sector.
Mr. Bachrach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Campbell, we've heard a little bit about fatigue management. This is an issue that not only is relevant for rail communities and communities along the rail corridors, but most specifically for rail workers, the people who work on the trains. It's been identified by the Transportation Safety Board as a concern since 1994. Why hasn't this been dealt with, and what needs to happen to adequately deal with fatigue management today?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the question, and maybe Greg McPherson is better placed to, as a locomotive engineer, to answer that question. Why?
Maybe, Mr. Chair, could we flip it over to Mr. McPherson?
Mr. McPherson, quickly, please.
My apologies. I had some issues with the microphone. I did hear fatigue management plan and what has being done.
Well, no, the question is what needs to be done? What isn't being done that should be?
While addressing fatigue in the workplace, myself as a locomotive engineer, I'm constantly fatigued. My life consists of a series of napping, is what I tell people. The unscheduled lifestyle that we live and the regular train lineups that are erratic and hard to decipher when I should be rested, that's the main problem. So we have train lineups. And then there's fear of reprisal. There's, if I make myself unavailable, which is the right, healthy choice to make, there's fear of some sort of reprisal or reprimanding from the company. So a lot of people are going to work, in my opinion, tired because they're afraid to be disciplined. Or, they're on the other end, there's some greed involved on a personal level. There's some people that will go to work tired just to make more money because maybe they missed a trip or something. So that is part of the equation too. But the major part that I see is train lineup inaccuracy. I'll just give you a quick example if I have 10 seconds.
Quickly, please.
A train was on the schedule for 17 o'clock, which is 5 p.m. It was on the lineup from 8 a.m. in the morning until about 14 o'clock, 2 p.m. that afternoon. And then right before it's supposed to get called, it went back 24 hours. So now this employee is trying to be rested to go to work at 5 p.m. And now they're not going to work for another 6 hours. So now they're rested and ready to go to work. And now they're staying awake for another 6 hours or longer before the next train comes. And that is a continual issue that we see daily.
Thank you, Mr. McPherson, Mr. Campbell, as well as Mr. Bachrach. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're now going to move on to the second round, where we have, starting us off, the Conservative Party. Mr. Soroka, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question will go to Mr. McPherson. Now, we've heard a lot about the difficulties with trains carrying oil and various other flammable products. My question to you, though, is, in order to prevent these disastrous oil spills, when it comes to transporting oil, could you touch on the safety of transporting oil through rail versus a pipeline?
From my own experience, what we've seen in regulatory practice recently as a result of Lake Menantic is a reduction in speeds in CMA limits, highly populated areas. That alone will not fix the problem. I think if we're going to continue transport oil by rail, which I do think can be safe, we're going to have stricter regulations on maintenance. And I see that in we call it dark territory, where there's not bonded rail. So where they have the engineering services won't control the track. With the pipelines, I'm not familiar with the process of, and I couldn't comment effectively on that.
Mr. Soroka.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Campbell, then, you had mentioned many of the rail derailments and the oil spills that have happened. Do you think that there would be a better way if we could actually get more pipelines built to get oil off of the tracks, and this way we could have a more safer route for our oil products?
Mr. Campbell?
Well, just to remind you, there have been some major oil pipeline accidents, oil and gas pipeline. Recently in Belgium, 24 people were killed. The Quebec participants will recall in LaSalle, Quebec, the gas line was destroyed. 28 people were killed. In Mexico recently, the Kinder Morgan pipeline, this was in 2012, 22 workers died. So let's not pretend that pipelines are safe, and the danger is with oil by rail. I think there's much that can be done to lower the risks and avoid another lac mégantic. But remember what the environmental commissioner of the AG said, the window is still open for another occurrence.
Mr. Soroka?
Okay, my question will be to Mr. Belfour then. Lac Mégantic was a horrible situation, and we definitely do not want to see that ever again in Canada. You had said there's a moratorium now that the residents would like to see to stop with oil products being put through the community. Would they be more inclined to have a pipeline now, or are they just opposed to oil completely? Like, there has to be the product still going through, so which would they prefer, a pipeline versus rail?
Mr. Belfour?
Well, Mr. Campbell illustrated the two methods are not safe. We've got single-walled oil pipelines in 2021. So when there's a crack, well, this leaks into nature. Sometimes it explodes or burns. The two methods used are not safe. The safety measures need to be reinforced. There needs to be a maintenance workers. Sometimes that part is left by the wayside, and that applies to pipelines too. There's not that many inspections, not more than for railways. So that's where the problem is. It doesn't lie elsewhere.
Soroka?
That's fine, Mr. Chair. Mr. McPherson, then, you had said now that, cars or rail cars are getting quite a bit longer in that. And one of the big issues I know I hear from my residents is trains blocking railway crossings, more so for either emergency vehicles, ambulance, fire engines trying to get through as a safety issue, or even just school buses trying to get to work, or even people getting to work. Is there something that can be done more? And I know they talk about the rail blockades can't be more than 5 minutes, but yet that doesn't seem to occur all the time.
Mr. McPherson?
Thank you. I think it's nearly impossible to comply with a 5-minute rule. The switching operations, there is room for improvements with that. Train design can be looked at as far as where the traffic that needs to be switched in regards to the location on the train. So what's on the back end of the train, you're going to be on crossings. If it's at the head end of the train, you won't be following crossings. Now, in the situation in Regina, I proposed a fix to blocking the ring road and those 11 crossings by making sure that rail was lined up for that movement to continue moving until it had cleared without having to stop and go at low speeds and block those crossings for extended period of times. Shorter trains, I think realistically is just not going to be an option for the carriers. That's just where we are today. But preventing them from stopping in key locations like highly populated areas or at-risk areas, I think there's definitely room for improvement on that.
Thank you, Mr. McPherson. Thank you, Mr. Soroka. Before I go on to Ms. Jacek from the Liberal Party, I do see that Mr. Penn has joined us. I understand that Mr. Penn is now just getting off work and has joined us on screen. Mr. Penn, I'm going to give you an opportunity to have some opening comments if you wish. Or do you just want to answer some questions?
I can do both, Vance. I'd like to address Mr. McPherson about the rail crossings blocking traffic. In Port Robinson, we're a small community isolated by 2 roads, 2 points of access here. and your trains cut off both points of access. I recently had a heart attack in February. With a 5-minute rule alone, that's enough to have people pass before the first responders can attend. Beyond that, when we're waiting 15, 20 minutes at a time, we're showing up late for work. And then the answer has always been, well, if you contact CN, they'll break the train apart. Well, how do they break the train apart when the trains are that long? And I've sat there for 20 minutes, and Mr. Badaway can tell you, I've sent him messages regarding it. And this is a daily or weekly occurrence. So how can we correct that?
Thank you, Mr. Penn. Any further comments, Mr. Penn, you want to make?
I'd like to thank the committee for asking me to join. I did send in a statement. I'm assuming that everybody's had an opportunity to read that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're just into questions right now, and the next set of questions is going to be coming from Ms. Jacek from the Liberal Party. Ms. Jacek, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. Certainly the testimony today and also on Tuesday has been extremely interesting, and of course the possibility of tremendous tragedy, such as we saw in Lac Mégantic, is there, as well as what we've also heard, the issue of noise, vibration, quality of life, blocking of traffic, as Mr. Penn has just alluded to, possibly emergency vehicles. And of course, at the back of people's minds, the potential that there could be a derailment in their community. And we know this is happening across the country. So I would like to direct my questions to Port Robinson Proud. In particular, we heard on Tuesday some testimony from a representative of the Canadian Transportation Authority who detailed to us that the CTA would respond to complaints within some 20 days, that they were able to order all sorts of mitigation related to noise and vibration, and that there would be orders served in those regards. So perhaps, Mr. Lepera, starting with you, could you please describe your experience in terms of approaching the CTA, the length of time that you have experienced in getting a response? I know that you're not supposed to discuss the mediation itself, but could you just lead us through the process and how it's worked for you?
Mr. Lepera?
For me, I'll tell you how it worked. I blocked myself out of it both times to make sure that I could talk here today. I had a hope and a dream you would someday have a standing committee, that democracy would prevail, and not to use that as a cliche, but that somebody would get it here, because I did not. It was the worst feeling as a city councillor, because you're in conflict of interest. It's the worst feeling you can't sign the NDA to be in mediation in case it ever needs to go public. And then again, recently, another NDA. So I can tell you, based on my conversations with Mr. Betancourt, who was the liaison who had offered me the opportunity to participate in the CTA, who had a lot of, it was a very roses and sunshine kind of conversation. You know, we can pretty much move mountains. I just didn't believe it. And I wasn't willing to sacrifice my voice to be able to do that. I found it really troubling Tuesday evening to hear the CTA has this much power to act upon complaints, and yet we've had 2 mediation sessions. They shunt through the night like it's a regular business day, which is not allowed. You know, the length of cars is not allowed. There are infractions constant. I sat for 32 minutes at a rail crossing. I called CN police and respectfully said, I'm sorry, it shouldn't be happening, but I have no jurisdiction. He's like, I can't do anything. 32 minutes.
Maybe I could turn to Miss
Wolfrath, yes.
Wolfrath as well for her experience in terms of timelines.
Ms. Wolfrath?
And the responsiveness.
And by the way, if I may, June, NDA folks, I'm sure you know this, but I'll just clarify, is a non-disclosure agreement. June, go ahead.
That's right. I can't discuss too much, but I can say that I originally started with an application to CTA about noise and vibration. It took about 6 months, so it really was a short time. CN and I and CTA came together. We had 2 sessions. We came to no resolutions. It was essentially listening and saying, yes, that happens and it has to happen. And it was left at that. And that's where it's been left.
So in essence, I mean, that the end result should be public knowledge. Surely there has been no resolution.
There's no resolution.
Okay, thank you very much. So how do you feel that the CTA's dispute resolution process should be changed?
I just don't know how to speak because I'm always afraid that I may infringe on the NDA that I signed.
Well, if you feel uncomfortable, please don't proceed.
I do feel uncomfortable. I honestly don't know how to interpret what I can say, so I'd rather just not say anything.
Anyway.
Mr. LaPera?
I think it's simple. I think you need to put the power back into the government. I think you need to revise the legislation. Just because it's legislation, yes, it's grandfathered, it's archaic. And it makes no sense to me that we have a Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms to protect our rights on every level, make sure everybody is equally protected. And yet a rail agreement cannot be changed to reflect changing society. And I would say this is why we elect leaders, and you're all leaders. Your people all trusted you. No, not the other person. They trusted you. And this is your chance to really, be a good a good exercise of democracy. I want to point something out, though, about this yard that's very interesting. When I moved here many years ago, I hope you give me some lateral movement on this. When I moved here 17 years ago, I did call the city planner, and I did my homework. A lot of people are like, well, you were dumb enough to move by a rail yard. No, when the vendor sold, he says, and trains go by. So I called I saw the fence in Mr. Penn's backyard, which is 6 feet tall. And I called the planner at the time. And I said, is that going to work? She's like, based on her sound studies, if I'm going to paint you a picture here, from my doorstep to the rail line is about 510 feet. Separating us is a rail line that is above grade. That's above the fence. Not only that, the forest that separates us, and there's not much of it with 500 feet and another row of houses, they all shed their leaves in the winter. There's no noise barrier. So it leads me to believe CN was consulted in this process before the subdivision went in, as was the city and the MOE. It leads me to believe one thing. If CN, they promised, if their traffic went up 4%, they had to introduce more or improved noise mitigating measures.
Okay.
So that tells me one thing. When you look at the layout here, that's conservation land beside the track. Where were they going to put the noise attenuation measures? They never expected to increase 4%. So I just connected the dots sitting here. I'm like, why would they have allowed to it? They were either going to go by the legislation, or the function of the yard has changed and they pretty much put a circle into a square hole. And that's how we've ended up at this meeting today, having the uncomfortable discussion with you guys, hoping we can affect change. So
Thank you,
Mr.
LaPera. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Jacek. We're now going to move on to the Bloc Québécois for 2.5 minutes. Mr. Barcelou-Duval, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Over the course of our work, witnesses have brought up the bypass track in Lac Mégantic. And on the Boucherville side, there was also an interest in having the railway track moved. My question is for Mr. Bon. If I understood correctly, in the past, you had already worked on various rail displacement projects. How did that happen? How was the collaboration with Transport Canada? And from your point of view, were there some things that should be improved? Thank you, sir. Indeed, at the beginning of the 1990s, in planning for the implementation of the Soligaz project, which was there to bury natural gas reserves in Varennes, these cars were supposed to help this project, and they were supposed to go through a populated area of the town of Varennes. And these were going to be highly inflammable goods. At that time, I was the member of provincial parliament, and with the government of Quebec, we had planned to create a bypass track to avoid having highly explosive goods going through our inhabited areas. We were met with clear refusal from the federal government, and it was at the time when the CN, which controlled the track in question, was not yet privatized. So you can imagine today, with a private company, how it could be that much more difficult to convince them to study the possibility of a bypass track. What I want to say here to the committee, and I would echo what Mr. Lepera said, the operational conditions in the industry have changed. This is no longer the end of the 1800s, where a lot of these railways had been installed and went through towns and villages to provide goods to those villages and towns with essential goods. It's much to the contrary today. The government of Quebec, the government of Canada, and those of other provinces are working to maximize the use of railroads for very commendable reasons, that is, for bringing down greenhouse gas emissions and for other environmental reasons. I think that it's now time for the federal government and the Department of Transport to change their position on projects for moving railroads, and that they do that from a point of view of prevention rather than managing things after the fact, as it was the case in Lac Mégantic. If the railroad is to play a more and more important role in transporting dangerous goods, then the federal government must be more receptive to the idea of moving over railroad tracks so they're no longer in inhabited areas.
We're now going to move on to the NDP. Mr. Bachrach, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. A question for Mr. Bellefleur. Mr. Bellefleur, you cited in your opening remarks the increased number of rail accidents. And we've had industry representatives at our committee who have said that the number of accidents per kilometer traveled by train has actually gone down. Now, from the perspective of a community that has been profoundly affected by a rail disaster, does this claim give you any comfort?
Mr. Bellefleur?
Well, listen, industry can have its arguments, but I'm talking to you about the TSB's report, which confirms that there was a 42% increase in incidents over the last years. It's not me who's saying it. It's an independent organization. It's a serious organization, and this has been documented. Yes, the variation of volume can mean that there's more or less incidents per year, but nonetheless, before 2012, there wasn't petroleum or unit cars going through our rails. There was oil and sulfuric acid, so any derailments were much less disastrous. But because of these huge trains, there's a huge problem.
Mr. Bellefleur, the Auditor General, in her recent follow-up audit on rail safety, I would like to read a sentence from her report, or rather from her presentation on April 13th at the Transport Committee. The Auditor General said, quote, "Overall, we found that 8 years later, the department had yet to fully address our recommendations, and that, in fact, there was still much to do to improve the oversight of rail safety in Canada." How does that make you feel, hearing that?
Mr. Bellefleur?
In Lac Mégantic, well, there was one of the worst tragedies here. and nothing has changed. What the Auditor General is saying, in her last report, she confirmed that a lac mégantic catastrophe could happen elsewhere. The conditions are still in place for that to happen, and that's why in 2021, on July 6th, we're organizing a big event on the railroad to protest against petroleum coming through lac mégantic.
Thank you, Mr. Backrack. We're now going to move on to the Conservative Party. Mr. Cram, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My questions are for Mr. McPherson of the Teamsters Union. Earlier, Mr. McPherson, you mentioned that you had some plans about alleviating the problem of blocked crossings at the Ring Road in Regina. I was wondering if you'd be willing to elaborate on these plans, because I'm sure that's one problem people in Regina would love to have addressed.
Mr. McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Crown, for the opportunity to speak today. It is so simple, it's almost laughable. Really, what happens when that train stops and is occupying the Ring Road and all those other crossings that we're talking about, there is a series of about 4 manual hand-operated switches that need to be lined depending on where they route that train through. If they're lined in advance, that train can keep rolling through. Now, the speed through that territory is about 10 miles an hour. So when you have a 2-mile long train, it is going to occupy that, but at least it's moving. When it stops, that's when the dangers occur, because we have people crawling through with the pedestrian crossings there. But the fix to that problem in itself is simple. And I've proposed this. I'm a health and safety representative and a co-chair for the South SAS Committee, and I've proposed this on numerous occasions and have yet to see it implemented.
Mr. Cram?
And I'm sorry, Mr. McPherson, you presented these plans to whom? To the city of Regina or to the railway companies, or who was it?
Mr. McPherson?
Sorry, I presented the solution to our local management and the superintendent, the general manager of the division, and it was agreed upon. And what we operate on is bulletins. So an information bulletin would be released saying this is how we're going to operate through that territory, and it has yet to happen.
Just clarification, Mr. McPherson, you mean the superintendent of CN Rail?
For CP Rail.
CP Rail. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Mr. Cram?
Okay, thank you. So Mr. McPherson identified 4 broad areas of concern that the Teamsters have: blocked crossings, emergency response procedures, new hires, and rest periods. I was wondering if you could tell the committee which one of these issues is his greatest concern and why.
Mr. McPherson?
Mr. Chair, the Teamsters position is on concerns. The greatest concern has always been fatigue. As I discussed earlier or mentioned earlier, the train lineups, inaccuracies of train lineups is one of the greatest causes for rail fatigue. As I alluded to earlier, many are faced with a decision to go to work tired, which is heavily influenced by fear of reprisal from the employer. Mandatory 8-hour broadcast of tour starts is going to help. We need more information so that we can be better prepared to go to work. The employer needs to cease disciplinary action. You know, we are governed by we have to be fit and rested prior to. We work in a safety critical position. Like when we make mistakes, they're not paper cuts. We don't hit backspace. We see major tragedies and major incidents happen, and these are often result in fatalities. And fatigue is a major component in that. And referring back to like Renan Tech, that happened at I think approximately 2 a.m.
Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le Président, point d'ordre.
Question fatigue.
Mr. Chair, point of order. The interpreter is pointing out that that he's having a very hard time interpreting Mr. McPherson because there's a lot of interference and noise.
Mr. Berthold. Mr. McPherson, if you can get that mic a bit closer to your mouth and see if that helps.
Okay, I know I did receive a phone call from tech support about the boom, and maybe it's not working. If it's picking up the hardware microphone on the laptop, I'll just try to slow down.
Okay.
Fatigue in the railway is a major component of train incidents and personal injuries. The new proposed duty to rest periods are a major improvement in improving upon that fatigue, but the railway carriers need to address the train lineups. That's when I'm going to go to work. I need to know well in advance how much time I need before I have to prepare for work. Right now, as it stands, if I work at midnight, I'll be phoned at 22 o'clock or 10 p.m. at night to report to work. So I have 2 hours notice before I'm to report to work. Prior to that, there's a train lineup that I can follow that's very inconsistent and often inaccurate. Like as alluded to previously, there's a train that's ready to go at 5 p.m. and I'm waiting and trying to be rested for that, because when I report to work, I can be working for a maximum of 12 hours. Now, if that suddenly disappears and I'm going to work at midnight for the next train, well, now I've been awake and rested to go since 5 p.m. Now I could be awake for another additional 12 hours. Fatigue science has proven that 17 hours of wakefulness is equivalent to a 0.02 blood alcohol content, and it increases exponentially after that.
Thank you, Mr. McPherson, and thank you, Mr. Cram. We're now going to move on to the Liberal Party. Ms. Martinez-Ferrada, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je suis désolée.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I had a few technical troubles with my microphone. I have a question for Mr. Campbell. I'd like to quote a document that Mr. Campbell quoted. Mr. Campbell, recently in the Interior News newspaper, you said this. You said, I'll say it in English.
Our communities is a grave... Attendez, Monsieur le Président, c'est que j'entends ma propre traduction.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair, it's because I'm hearing interpretation in my ear. Pardon me, just a moment. Pardon me. You said this.
Community is a grave concern to me, as it took 8 years to Transport Canada to act on any of the recommendations that came out of the review of the Lac-Mégantic disaster, and dangerous conditions in rail car still operates. Souhaitez-vous corriger cette affirmation ou vous...
Do you want to correct this affirmation, or do you claim that Transport Canada took no measures in 8 years?
Am I on? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the publication is that quoted me, but what I've said already is that there is a discrepancy between the needs to improve safety, which have been outlined and identified by multiple reports, and the marginal progress that Transport Canada has taken. Just look at work rest, for example. I mean, that's been on, a recommendation by your committee reports previously, and it's still a huge problem. I remember interviewing Steve Callahan, who was the expert witness at the Lac-Mégantic trial, and about fatigue management provisions in the SMS, and he says they're kind of a joke, and the reason that is that companies, it's a question of bottom line, and companies can get away with it, and they're not taking measures. Same with whistleblower protections, the same thing. It should be taken out.
Merci,
Martinez
Monsieur
Ferrara.
Campbell. Non, je comprends que c'était peut-être une...
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. No, I realize it was maybe a poor interpretation of what you said. You also claim that some of these cars are carrying propane. Well, I'd like to say that this isn't totally true. I've had a number of discussions with public servants, and in 2015, Transport Canada put in place a progressive but aggressive application of this regulation based on risk. And the timeline was accelerated twice, and since November of 2016, well, certain oil cannot be transported. Now, in the case of ethanol and all other liquids, it's April 2025. However, I'm being told that other liquids transported in smaller volumes and in unit trains. So do you think that the affirmations that you shared are maybe obsolete?
With your articulation of the phase-out schedule, it's 2025. They should be completely phased out. I would note that not the Auditor General, but the...
Mais on parle de l'éthanol en 2025.
But we're talking about ethanol for 2025. For the petroleum, it's another year.
All right, thank you. And I just want to get into another question. J'aimerais vous poser une autre question, Monsieur Campbell.
I would like to ask you another question, Mr. Campbell. Thank you. I'd like to know, now, the cars that still carry crude oil, now, how would you propose that we transport dangerous goods in this country? What other means of transportation do we have?
I think that's true. That's one way of transporting dangerous goods, and if it's done properly and the risk is minimized, then I'm supportive. What I'm trying to convey to you is that the actions have not been taken to minimize safety risks, and the TSB chair has noted that it wanted the phase out of these old cars to be accelerated, and she hasn't got a good answer to that.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you, Ms. Martinez Ferrara. We're now going to move on to the third round. And the third round is going to start off with the Conservative Party. Ms. Cusi. Now, Mr. Bellafleur, I see your hand up. I will ask that the next speaker recognize you. I can't. I have to allow the floor to go to the next speaker, and then hopefully then that speaker will recognize you. And the next speaker will be on behalf of the Conservative Party, Ms. Cusi. Ms. Cusi, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be passing my time back to Mr. MP Berthold.
Thank you, Ms. Cusi. And Mr. Berthold, you have the floor for 5 minutes. And if you can keep in mind, with all due respect to Mr. Bellafleur, he does have his hand up. Mr. Berthold, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur Bellefleur.
Thank you, Mr. Bellefleur. Go ahead. If you can do it in 30 seconds. I have a lot of respect for you, but also a lot of questions. Yes. I just wanted to come back to the question about the .111 cars. I heard the question. It's true that we no longer transport petroleum. That's been for a few years now. But there is still sulfuric acid being transported, and that's more dangerous because that can create a toxic mix with propane. And that's why in Mississauga there was an evacuation of over thousands of residents. They were replaced by variations of the .111 cars. And there was a reboot, as we say. Thank you very much, Mr. Bellefleur. I'm very sorry, but I really wanted to let you answer, but I do have two things that are pretty important. First of all, I was surprised, Mr. McPherson, when you were talking about fatigue, because in the report given by Transport Canada on fatigue, well, this matter of fatigue is settled according to them. And I'm a little surprised. Are you aware of the creation of an expertise center on fatigue that was created? It seems to be settled, but you're telling me that's not the case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I do not believe that is the case as it stands now. I know there have been amendments made. There currently is in place work rest rules that have been amended, but they're coming into force. Will not be for another, in totality, for another 2 years, I believe. As it stands now, train lineup inaccuracy and fatigue is still a major issue in the railways. I'm a legislative representative on the Saskatchewan Provincial Board, and it affects both CP and CN.
Mr. Berthold?
Merci beaucoup parce que
Thank you very much. Mr. Badaway, you were there in 2016 when we did a report on fatigue. This was a priority issue at the time. And some things have been changed. Transport Canada tells us that the rules were amended to reduce fatigue for shorter periods and for various shifts of work. But I think there's still work to be done, Mr. McPherson. I think the committee will take good note of your suggestion, because this is a very worrisome fact, especially when we know all the ramifications and what can happen if conductors are not at their best when they're operating huge locomotives that are bigger and bigger all the time. Mr. Chair, I know that I have a motion to table, and I would like to present it. The motion is as follows: that as part of its study on rail safety, the Transport Committee asked the Minister of Transport to submit to it by June 23rd all documents relating to the agreement reached with the Canadian Pacific concerning the construction of the track bypassing the Lac-Mégantic railway line in order to reassure the members of the committee on the construction delays of this project aimed at ensuring the safety of the citizens of Lac-Mégantic following the rail tragedy of July 6, 2013, which claimed the lives of 47 people. The motion has already been sent to committee members. I just added the words including. All the documents, comma, including. That's the only change that I've made. In English.
Relating to and including the agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Berthold. And the motion is in order due to the fact that we are discussing this. And with that, I will ask members if they have any questions. I see 2 hands up.
Monsieur, je veux juste parler sur
Mr. Chair, I just want to speak to the motion for 2 seconds just to explain why this needs to be tabled and to give some context to committee members. It needs to be done quickly.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, j'ai eu l'occasion de...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the opportunity to speak with the mayor of Lac-Mégantic this week. She would have liked to have been here, but unfortunately she had an engagement with citizens this evening. And it has to do with the bypass track, among other things. So on her behalf, I'll pass on this information. I also had the opportunity yesterday to speak with the leaders of Canadian Pacific, and we asked them for a copy of the agreement, and they had no objective to submitting this agreement to the committee members. But they did tell us that the decision was up to the government. We worked closely with, and I congratulate the parliamentary secretary for getting the necessary commitments for the bypass track so that it can be built on time, and the Minister of Transport as well. However, the timelines before us are extremely short. And we would like this commitment, that we would like this track to be made by 2023. And we think that making this agreement public between the CP and Transport Canada around the building of the track, well, that would be a way of being very transparent for those who live in Lac-Mégantic and who went through this tragedy. So I would ask to committee members to accept this motion for the sake of transparency and to make sure that this track is built by the date promised. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Berthold. I'm now going to move on to Ms. Martinez-Ferrada. Ms. Martinez-Ferrada, the floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Écoutez,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, listen, on one hand, I'm very surprised. On a number of occasions, I've said publicly to a number of people, including the mayor of Lac-Mégantic, to the mayor of Frontenac and Nantes. We've already met them a number of times, and I've met them as recently as last week. And we are organizing a public presentation for the property owners to get the land acquisition process underway. It's very important for the bypass track. I'm a little surprised by what my colleague has presented, because we haven't finished yet with our discussions with our witnesses. We haven't finished asking them questions. We didn't even have a chance to finish the third round, and I'm sure they still have many more things to tell us. And as I already reiterated a number of times, the timeline is an accelerated timeline. Of course, there are stages involved in this timeline. They are public steps. In fact, all that has been made public. One of the challenges, and I think my colleague will understand this, is that as with any agreement, often there's commercial information that can be of a sensitive nature. And in this case, the CP would like it to remain confidential. So I'm very surprised to see that my colleague is speaking on behalf of the CP. Perhaps I should ask the CP themselves if they're okay with that report being public. I don't know if them or their employees or their shareholders would be okay with that. I think the government is also responsible for their negotiations with the different stakeholders. We must respect and uphold a very rigorous process and confidentiality around certain aspects of negotiation. And so I'm very uncomfortable with the proposal that's been put forward. On the contrary, I'd like to propose that they meet us and Transport Canada so that we can hear exactly what was presented to the mayor and to the landowners, and to hear what the timeline is, the public timeline, all information that can be read on Transport Canada's website. All the steps are publicly disclosed there. And that way, we can have further discussions on the timeline. But I don't think that making an agreement public like this one, without it being validated by Transport Canada, well, I think that would be irresponsible on our part. I think there are some other colleagues who would like to speak to this, so I can come back to it if necessary. But I would invite him to, first of all, allow us to finish our evening here with the witnesses who surely still have things to tell us. Let's finish our question round, and then we could discuss with my colleague the importance of his motion. But I think that him and I agree on the timeline that must be respected. And there are public presentations, even tonight, at 5 p.m. I'm going to be at a meeting, and I think my colleague could participate in this too, rather than announcing this at committee before witnesses. I think this is a purely political move on his part. And this has to do with the study that we're doing today. Mr. Chair?
Point d'ordre, juste parce que comme on...
A point of order. Since I'm not participating remotely, you might not have seen that I raised my hand, so I just want to make sure that you added me to the speakers list.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Berthold. Ms. Martinez-Ferrada, was that an amendment you were putting forward, or was it just a suggestion?
Monsieur le Président, je pense que...
Mr. Chair, I believe other colleagues wish to speak. I'll let them speak to my colleague's motion first, and then I'll put myself on the list for after.
Great, thank you. Ms. Jasek, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I think obviously we understand that Monsieur Berthold is interested in transparency. I would hope that from what Parliamentary Secretary Martinez Ferrada has said about the type of consultation that is going on with the public in Lac Mégantic, that there is going to be a lot of information available to the community going forward. And the timeline referenced in this motion, I've been on many committees now.
Monsieur le Président, nous avons...
Point of order, Mr. Chair. We've got an alarm system that's going off right now in the room, and the interpreters are here as well. Everyone's here, but we're wondering what we're supposed to do. Perhaps we could suspend for a few moments?
Thank you, Mr. Berthold. Mr. Clerk? Mr. Clerk, if you can give us an update on what's happening in the House right now?
I'm waiting as you are to see what the alarm is for. I would suggest...
You're not in the House?
No. We normally all receive a message on our emergency messaging system, so it should pop up on all of our devices. Although normally if there is an alarm, normally we would expect everyone to
Thank you.
Vacate the building.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Berthold, is the alarm still going off?
Oui, écoutez.
Yes, it is. You can hear it.
I will suspend the meeting until further notice. Mind you, members, we have a time of 6:04 to adjourn the meeting, so I will let you know that in advance. But I will, because of the resources available to us or lack thereof. So I will suspend for a few moments to see how the outcome turns out in the House. three comments. I first want to say to Taylor, Mr. Bachrach, thank you for bringing this study forward. Obviously, the study is going to have to continue in the fall months with the next two meetings, and of course, with that, the clerk will prep us to, in fact, make sure that we're ready for that first of the two meetings in the fall. Secondly, I do want to say to the members, as this is our last meeting of the session before rising for the summer, to all of you, have a wonderful, wonderful summer. Take some time with your family, get some rest, and please enjoy it. And finally, I do want to say to the members, have a great evening, and I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.